A team of German Shepherd working dogs found a park ranger chained to a tree, and what happened next will change the way you see the bond between man and animal. On a routine patrol through the snow-dusted mountains of Brazil, a highly trained K9 unit did the unimaginable. For just a moment, their handler was distracted, and the dogs vanished into the dense woods. Guided by nothing but instinct and an unshakable loyalty, they pressed on, deep into the wilderness. There, they found him. A man, barely conscious, bloodied and bruised, with heavy chains binding his wrists to a frozen tree. He was a park ranger, left for dead in the middle of nowhere. Instead of scattering or barking aimlessly, the dogs acted with a purpose that no one could have predicted. What followed was a series of precise, moving, and incredibly human actions that would stir the souls of even the most seasoned officers. This is not just a story of survival. It is a powerful lesson in trust, courage, and how sometimes the one we think needs saving is the one who ultimately saves us. Before we continue, remember to share this story so more people can witness the incredible bond between humans and their canine companions. The snow had been falling for hours, blanketing the trails of Chapada dos Veadeiros National Park in a shimmering white mantle. Few dared to venture into this region during the harsh winter, save for park rangers like João Oliveira. At 42, João had dedicated 20 years of his life to protecting this wilderness, its animals, and the people who passed through it. But on this day, he was not on patrol. Instead of tracking poachers or aiding lost hikers, João was the one in peril, chained to a tree. His breath came in short, icy puffs. Blood trickled from a gash on his temple, freezing against his cheek. Heavy chains pinned him to a gnarled pine, his wrists raw and torn from his struggle to break free, bound behind his back. His uniform was ripped and soaked with a mixture of blood and melted snow. He could no longer feel his fingers and was drifting in and out of consciousness. It had been 2 days since the ambush. He remembered the angry voices, muffled by ski masks, demanding access to the park for their illegal logging and poaching operations. When he refused, they decided to make an example of him, leaving him in the frigid wilderness to freeze, to disappear without a trace. But then something shifted. At first, it was just a whisper on the wind. Then, the soft crunch of paws on snow grew distinct. Through eyes swollen from the cold, João wondered if he was hallucinating. He squinted, trying to separate dream from the stark reality of the trees around him. That's when he saw them. 5 dark silhouettes moving with slow, deliberate purpose against the white backdrop. Panic seized him. Wolves? But his survival instincts screamed at him to remain still, to show no fear. As the figures drew closer, he saw they were not wild predators. They were German shepherds, impeccably trained. Their thick coats were dusted with snow, their golden eyes sharp and intelligent. They moved not like strays, but like soldiers on a mission. One of them, larger than the rest, stepped forward, sniffed the air, and locked its gaze on João. Then something incredible happened. The dog didn't bark or growl. It simply sat before him, ears pricked, chest proud, like an imposing statue. Another dog approached to investigate the base of the tree, while the others fanned out in an almost tactical formation. These dogs were not lost. They were at work. Through a wave of emotion and the biting cold, João managed to whisper, "Good boy." The lead dog, the one with a faint scar above his left eye, moved in and nuzzled the chain. He let out a single, sharp bark that echoed through the silent woods, a signal. Even if João couldn't be sure anyone else would hear, the dogs had communicated their message. They began to act. One started digging frantically in the snow around the chain, exposing the padlock. Another leaped and barked at the sky, a clear call for attention. It was as if they had instantly understood the task at hand. Minutes felt like hours as João teetered on the edge of consciousness. Just as the darkness threatened to consume him again, he heard distant shouts, the heavy tread of boots in the snow, and an urgent human voice calling, "Here! Over here!" Barely able to lift his head, João saw a uniformed man emerge from the trees, followed by other officers. The dogs had done it. They had brought help. As his vision began to fade, he saw the lead dog, standing just a few feet away, watching him with an expression that felt like pure understanding. And then everything went black. He awoke to the sharp smell of antiseptic and the steady beep of a heart monitor. His body ached everywhere, as if nails had been driven into every bone and nerve. Blinking against the harsh fluorescent lights of the ranger station's infirmary, he felt an intense warmth, a stark contrast to the freezing days he had just endured. A nurse approached. "You're safe now," she said softly. "They found you just in time." João tried to speak, his voice a hoarse rasp. "The dogs. Where are the dogs?" She smiled. "They're right outside. The K9 unit that saved you. They've been waiting, especially the big one with the scar." João let his head fall back onto the pillow. It hadn't been a dream. The dogs were real. Later, Chief Roberto came in, his expression a mixture of relief and stern concern. "Oliveira," he said, his voice gravelly, "you have one hell of a story to tell." João nodded slowly. "How did you find me?" The chief crossed his arms. "Our K9 team was on a training exercise on the east side of the park. They got separated from their handler during a sudden blizzard. We thought they were lost for good. Then they showed up back at the base alone, covered in snow and barking their heads off. One of the handlers, Camila Souza, knew something was wrong. She trusted them, got in a vehicle, and followed their tracks." João closed his eyes, his heart aching with gratitude. "They saved me," he murmured. "But here's the strange part," Roberto continued, pulling a file from under his arm. It contained a map of the forest, covered in handwritten notes. "You were chained to a tree in an area that hasn't been patrolled in over 5 years. No active trails, no campsites, no roads. Whoever did this knew exactly where to leave someone they never wanted to be found." João's jaw tightened. "Illegal operations. They wanted to silence me. They almost did." "We'll find them," the chief vowed. "But there's more." He opened the door, and a large German shepherd with intelligent, scarred eyes padded silently into the room. He stopped at the door, ears erect, then walked directly to João's bed and rested his head gently on the mattress. "Meet Rex," Roberto said. "He's an 8-year-old decorated work dog, retired from the Special Forces after his handler was killed overseas. He's had a hard time adjusting ever since. Doesn't bond easily. But for some reason, he chose you." With a trembling hand, João stroked the dog's thick neck. Rex closed his eyes, leaning into the touch as if it were the only warmth he'd ever known. Camilla, the handler, entered next. A woman in her early 30s, with deep brown eyes and dark blonde hair tied back. She watched them with admiration. "Rex has never done that before," she said. "Not since he lost his partner. It's like something in him changed when he found you." João looked from Camilla to the dog, a profound connection forming in his heart. It wasn't just another rescue for him, was it? He knew how I felt. Camila nodded. He stayed by your side the entire time. Wouldn't move until we got you free. Even then, he kept looking back, as if he didn't fully trust us to take care of you. João looked at Rex and whispered, "You saved me. You chose me." But before the feeling of comfort could settle, the door burst open. An aide, his face pale, announced with a trembling voice, "Chief, something's wrong. We found fresh tire tracks and newly cut chains in Zone 12. Someone was out there last night." Roberto's expression hardened. They went back. João pushed himself up, his ribs screaming in protest. "They think I'm still out there," he rasped. They were going back to finish the job. The room fell silent. Rex remained alert, his ears pricked and his body rigid, a sign that this was far from over. The ranger station had never felt so quiet. Outside, snow fell in a gentle rhythm, cloaking the trees in a fresh layer of white. Inside, the tension was a physical presence. Officers whispered behind closed doors. Chief Roberto hadn't left the comms room since the tracks were discovered. Whoever had returned, whatever they were planning, it wasn't finished. João sat on a wooden bench near a side window, wrapped in a thermal blanket. His hands were still bandaged, and bruises painted his jaw and ribs. But his mind was sharp. He couldn't shake the feeling that the forest itself was holding its breath, that something dangerous lurked in the silence. Rex lay at his feet, a loyal sentinel. He was awake, breathing slowly, always watching. The scar above his eye, which might seem intimidating to most, now told João a story of pain and survival they both understood. Camila entered quietly, holding a steaming mug of coffee. "Still haven't taken your painkillers?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "They make my head fuzzy," João replied. "I can't afford that right now." She sat beside him. "We're calling in a federal investigation," she said in a low voice. "This is bigger than simple poaching. It's too organized, too clean. Someone had maps, equipment, and the nerve to leave a man for dead." João looked at Rex, then back at Camila. Rex shouldn't have been there. None of them should have. They weren't lost, Camila. They were sent. Camila looked puzzled. "Nobody sent them, João." He leaned forward slightly. Then something else guided them. A silence fell between them, not of doubt, but of dawning understanding. Camila, who had spent years training police dogs, spoke softly. "He hasn't left your side, not even when I've called him." João gazed at Rex. "He reminds me of the ranger I used to be. Loyal, tireless, always watching." After a moment, Camila asked, "Do you think he could work with you?" João blinked. "How?" "He's retired. They said he was too traumatized." "He was," she said. "But Rex has never connected with anyone like this. If we were to keep him on, he'd need a handler willing to train with him, to build that partnership from the ground up. But I think he's already made his choice." João was silent, his eyes locked on the dog. Rex stared back, unblinking, as if a silent pact was being forged between them. Finally, João whispered, "If he's willing, I'm not letting him go." Suddenly, a short, muffled bark from Rex shattered the quiet. He shot to his feet, muscles tensed, ears pinned back, nose in the air. Camila was up in an instant. "What is it, boy?" Another bark, louder and more urgent this time, was followed by the faint clang of metal on metal from the back of the building. Ignoring the pain that shot through his legs, João said, "That was the garage door." He grabbed a radio from a nearby bench. Before he could key the mic, the lights flickered and died, plunging them into darkness. Camilla fumbled for her flashlight, its trembling beam cutting through the black. "Stay here. I'll check it out." But Rex let out a low, visceral growl and planted himself in the doorway, blocking her path. Camilla froze. "He doesn't want you to go alone," João said, his voice calm. Outside, a shadow moved past the window, too fast to identify. Then, the sound of shattering glass echoed from the far end of the building. Camilla raised her radio. "We have an intruder. South entrance." Before she could finish, a deafening bang reverberated down the hall. João grabbed a vintage fire axe from its mount on the wall. "We need to move. Now." Rex was already ahead of them, his posture low, his eyes gleaming in the sporadic flashlight beam. They moved in silence down a narrow corridor, past the dormitories and the mess hall. The emergency generator hadn't kicked in. With every step, it felt like they were counting down to something terrible. It was then they heard a man's voice, low and determined. "Seal it up. I told you he wouldn't die out there." Joao's blood ran cold. They had come back, and this time they wouldn't be leaving any witnesses. Footsteps echoed slowly off the cold concrete walls, their cadence deliberate. Whoever was inside the station was in no hurry. Their confidence bled into arrogance. Joao's hand tightened around the axe, though every muscle in his body screamed in protest. A surge of adrenaline made him forget the pain. Beside him, Rex moved in absolute silence, each step measured and intentional. Camilla followed close behind, her flashlight cutting through the darkness in short bursts, her weapon held ready. First, they reached an empty storage room. Then, a silent corridor at the south entrance. Finally, they heard it, the unmistakable sound of breathing. It wasn't their own. It was coming from behind the door to the generator room. João signaled for silence. Rex's ears twitched, his body going rigid, as if frozen in time. Moving discreetly to Camilla's side, João whispered, "We're opening that door. We don't know what's waiting for us." Camilla nodded, her finger tightening on the trigger. João took a deep breath before kicking the door open, revealing a seemingly empty room. But Camilla's flashlight beam swept over scattered tools, a broken chair, and a spilled can of oil, until it caught the glint of steel. "Behind you!" Camilla screamed, as a man lunged from behind the generator, brandishing an iron bar. João ducked just in time, the metal pipe slicing through the air where his head had been. Rex didn't wait. He lunged with stunning precision, sinking his teeth into the attacker's arm, causing the bar to fall with a dull thud. The man roared in anger, calling Rex a stupid mutt, but the dog held fast. João grabbed the intruder's other arm and slammed him against the wall, pinning him. "You were supposed to kill me and disappear, weren't you?" João snarled. The man struggled, but between João's weight and Rex's iron grip, he stood no chance. Camilla quickly cuffed him, reading him his rights in a firm voice. But as he spat blood on the floor, he offered a malicious smile. "You think I'm the only one?" João froze. "Check the perimeter," Camilla ordered. Leaving the man restrained, they raced back into the corridor. Outside, headlights flickered through the shadows, followed by furtive movements and then a series of sharp cracks. "Pop, pop, pop!" An agent's voice crackled over the radio, announcing a breach in the vehicle bay. João turned to Camilla. "They didn't come for me. They came to erase everything." Rex let out a sharp bark and bolted toward the main entrance. João followed without hesitation. Through a side window, he saw two masked figures storming the garage. weapons raised. One of the snowmobiles was already running, its engine rumbling. They're planning to escape north, Camilla explained. If they reach the forest, we'll never catch them. João looked down at Rex. Can you stop them? As if in answer, Rex shot through the emergency exit, his paws barely touching the ground as he vanished into the snowy darkness. João and Camilla ran after him, their boots crunching in the snow as the wind howled through the trees. In a clearing near the garage, headlights shone brightly. One of the intruders had mounted a snowmobile and gunned the engine, but as he tried to speed away, Rex slammed into his chest. The man screamed as he was thrown from the vehicle, landing in a deep snowdrift. The second intruder raised his weapon, but João was faster. He threw the axe, hitting the man's arm and sending the gun flying. Camilla tackled him to the ground. The fight was over as quickly as it had begun. Within seconds, other agents arrived, cuffing the remaining intruders and securing the area. João stood in the snow, his chest heaving, his clothes soaked and his body trembling when he saw Rex limping toward him. A bullet had grazed his leg, but he still stood proud. João knelt and opened his arms. Rex came close, resting his head on his chest. You saved us again, João whispered, holding the dog tight. You saved everyone. In that moment, João felt something shift inside him. This was no longer just about rescue. It was about purpose. Although the station was secure again, the atmosphere had changed. Agents spoke in hushed tones as the prisoners were led away. Rex was treated for a clean wound that, while it hadn't hit any vital organs, would require surgery and a period of rest. João sat beside him on the cold infirmary floor, his hand resting gently on the dog's chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing. His eyes were fixed on the door, waiting for the next threat. He didn't feel safe. Not yet. Camilla returned in silence, holding a thick folder filled with incident reports. They're refusing to talk, she said quietly. All three of them. No names, no prints, no ID. João frowned. That doesn't make any sense. They knew the layout, the patrol schedules, even where the generator was. Camilla hesitated, then handed him a smaller folder. I pulled this from the logs. Look at the date. João opened it, his eyes narrowing. 4 weeks ago, a civilian contractor had been granted temporary access to the north side of the park. Name: Marcos Almeida. Purpose: maintenance on the wildlife cameras. The problem was, João had never authorized it, and the signature on the document wasn't his. He looked up at Camilla. Someone forged this. Camilla nodded. Not just anyone. Someone with inside access. João's jaw tightened. Are you saying this came from within? Camilla's silence was all the explanation he needed. Later that night, after the station had quieted, João went outside for some air. The snow was still falling gently, blanketing the world in a deceptive calm. Rex walked beside him, limping slightly, his tail swaying slowly as his nose tested the wind. That's when they saw him. Delegate Louise stood near the northern perimeter, alone, staring out into the woods. João stopped. That's strange. Louise turned at the sound of footsteps and forced a smile. Couldn't sleep either. Something like that, João replied. His eyes narrowed. Louise gestured toward the trees. Funny, isn't it? After all these years on the job, the biggest threat was never the wilderness. João remained silent as Louise sighed and stepped closer. They just wanted to close a deal. I never imagined they'd go so far as to chain you up That was never part of the plan. João stood paralyzed, the words sinking in like poison. It was you, he whispered. Louise's face twisted, not with remorse but with weariness. You were always in the way of the permits, digging up reports that were meant to stay buried. They offered money to look the other way. That's all it was supposed to be. João clenched his fists. You left me to die. Louise nodded coldly. I didn't expect you to survive. No one could have in that storm. He then glanced at Rex. But I didn't count on him. Rex let out a low growl, his body tensing, and Louise took a slow step back. Look, if you drop this, I can make sure no more trouble comes to you or that dog. You could even get a medal, take an early retirement. No one ever has to know. But João shook his head. Do you really think I'm going to stay quiet after this? Louise's hand moved slowly toward his hip, but he was too late. Rex lunged before Louise could draw his weapon. The delegate hit the ground with a groan, crushed under the weight of the trained dog. This time, João didn't stop Rex. He stepped forward, looked down at Louise and said, You broke your oath. You betrayed me. By the time Camilla and the other agents arrived, the truth was already unraveling. João handed over the forged documents. Camilla checked the logs and Rex stood by, watching intently. The man who had led their team for over a decade was taken into custody in silence. But even as the doors closed behind Louise, João knew the damage ran deeper than one man's betrayal. He turned to Camilla. Everything he touched is compromised. Every permit, every report. We have to start from scratch. Camilla agreed. Then we'll do it together. João looked at Rex. And not without him. But that night, something in Rex had changed. He paced the station's corridors restlessly, his instincts sharpened, his ears always alert. João sat beside him as a fire crackled in the background. You sensed it before any of us, didn't you? Rex didn't answer, but his eyes never left the shadows outside. João knew this chapter wasn't over. In the days that followed, a quiet pall fell over the forest station as the snow continued to fall. Investigators from the capital descended, combing through every corner of the base, reviewing permits, digging up old records, and unearthing the lies Louise had buried for years. The truth emerged in fragments: a network of illegal land sales, falsified access for criminal syndicates, and rangers who had been quietly reassigned or silenced. João gave one deposition after another, his voice steady, though his eyes betrayed a deep weariness. The betrayal throbbed like an old wound. He had trusted Louise for so many years. They had worked together, built cabins, fought fires. But the man who had once handed him his badge had left him chained up like an animal to die. Through it all, Rex never left his side. Not once. He sat with him through every interview, every meeting, and every long, silent walk through the snow at night. The other agents began to see him not just as a dog, but as a soldier, a brother, almost a legend. On the third night after Louise's arrest, João stood by the station fence. The sky, finally clear, revealed stars glittering coldly above the treetops, his breath forming slow clouds in the air. Camilla approached him quietly. They're offering you a transfer, back to a major city, a desk job, full benefits, psychological support, she said. João hesitated, then looked down at Rex, who lay at his feet, his tail giving a slight thump as their eyes met. Do I look like a man who belongs in an office? He asked with a hint of humor. Camilla managed a tired smile. I didn't think so. But they're not going to stop, are they? he added. Camilla's smile faded. No. There's too much money tied up in these lands. Too many names we still don't know, and others who are still at large. João nodded slowly. Then I'm staying. Camilla handed him an envelope. I figured you'd say that. This is your official transfer to the K9 division, if you want it. Rex has already been cleared for active duty under your command. João opened the envelope with steady hands. Inside was a neatly organized dossier with his name, Rex's, and their team designation. Eco Reserve K9 Tactical Team. You really think I'm qualified? He asked. Camilla looked from him to Rex. I think you already are one. João knelt beside Rex, running a hand through the dog's thick fur. What do you say, partner? Rex let out a soft bark, a sound of quiet confidence that meant, yes. Even so, as the days passed, the feeling of peace grew thinner. The sense of being watched returned. Agents reported strange disturbances, footprints in the snow that didn't match any local wildlife. Equipment moved out of place, and brief bursts of radio static during the night. Nothing was conclusive, but it was enough to unnerve even the most seasoned rangers. One night, as João reviewed reports alone in the communications cabin, the security monitor flickered, dissolved into static, and went dark. He tried to reboot the signal, but something was blocking the connection. At that moment, Rex's ears perked up, his muscles tensing. Seconds later, the emergency lights outside began to flash. João stepped out into the biting cold, a flashlight in one hand, his service weapon holstered at his hip. Rex took the lead, his tail low, his nose tasting the wind. They reached the station fence where there was nothing but snow, trees, and silence, until a soft clinking of chains, the same metallic sound that haunted João's dreams, drifted from nearby. Glancing to his right, he saw a figure moving swiftly behind a tree. Hey! João shouted. Show yourself! There was no answer, only the whisper of the wind and the falling snow. Rex growled protectively. Just before the figure disappeared completely into the darkness, a glint of metal reflected the moonlight. A badge. João's blood ran cold. It wasn't over. Someone on the inside, someone else with access, was still out there. Watching. That night, João barely slept. The image of the badge glinting in the moonlight haunted him, and he understood at once. Louise hadn't been working alone. There was someone else in uniform, an insider, still operating from within. By dawn, the snow had stopped, casting an eerie silence over the forest beneath a pale winter sky. Camilla gathered a small response team, but the intruders' tracks had been meticulously erased. Whoever had approached the station had done so with military precision. Still, João couldn't shake the heavy feeling in his chest. He glanced at Rex, who hadn't taken his eyes off the tree line since the night before. Their bond went beyond mere instinct. It was a trust forged in survival. João didn't have to say a word to know what Rex was feeling. He knew something was coming. Later that afternoon, João and Camila set out for one of the old patrol lodges on the edge of Sector 9, a place few dared to venture in winter. The lodge had been deemed unsafe for the cold season by Louise, but something told João it was the place to start. As they arrived, Rex bolted from the vehicle before it had even come to a complete stop, his hackles raised as he sniffed the air. Inside, the wood stove was cold, but fresh tracks marked the snow outside, and the lock had been forced, then hastily repaired. Camilla drew her weapon. We're not alone, she said. João moved forward cautiously, Rex shadowing his every measured step. As they reached the back of the structure, the unexpected happened. A single gunshot shattered the silence, shaking the wooden frame of the building. Camilla dropped behind a door as João dove for cover, but the bullet wasn't meant for them. It struck Rex. A sharp yelp echoed through the lodge as the dog collapsed, his leg bleeding profusely. João's heart hammered against his ribs as he scrambled to Rex's side. "Stay with me, buddy! Stay with me!" he pleaded, pressing his hands against the wound. The shooter then emerged, unmasked. It was Marcelo, a young security auxiliary, one of Luis's most trusted men. "You should have stayed dead, Ranger," Marcelo spat. "Did you really think arresting Luis would solve anything? He was just the face. I built this." João rose slowly, blood dripping from his hands. "You shot him," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You shot my dog." Marcelo was unfazed. "That dog cost us everything." Unseen, Camila moved like a shadow through the corridors as João continued to press the man. "Why, Marcelo? Why betray your own people?" Marcelo gave a half smile. "You think this land means anything to them? To the government? It's just property. I made it profitable." "At what cost?" João pushed. "Lives? Honor? Your badge?" "Don't pretend you wouldn't do the same," Marcelo sneered. In that instant, Camilla struck. Two swift steps, followed by a precise blow to Marcelo's knee, sent him crashing to the floor. She had him in cuffs before he could even reach for his weapon. João turned back to Rex, his mind consumed by panic. The dog was struggling to breathe. "We need to get out of here, now," Camilla commanded. "I'm calling the evac team." Gently, João wrapped Rex in his own coat and lifted him into his arms. "Don't you give up on me," he whispered. Hours later, the veterinary team at the State Canine Center confirmed the bullet had missed Rex's vital organs by inches. Surgery would be necessary, but he was going to survive. João never left his side. The story of the ranger and the loyal dog who saved him spread like wildfire. News crews arrived, their cameras capturing every moment. João gave interviews, not as a victim, but as a voice for those who protect and sacrifice without ever expecting recognition. After the surgery, when Rex finally opened his eyes and looked straight at João, his tail giving a slow, weary wag, João smiled through his tears. "You're coming home, partner," he said. Weeks passed. The winter snows melted, giving way to spring. A new patrol team was formed, carefully selected and rebuilt from the ashes of betrayal. João was appointed leader of the new Canine Tactical Unit, Echo Team. Camilla became the base's head of operations. And Rex, older and a little slower but stronger than ever, returned to the field. With every patrol, with every person they protected, everyone knew that if danger ever returned, loyalty would be there to meet it, with watchful eyes and a heart that never gave up. If this story has inspired you, remember, true courage doesn't wear a cape. It walks on four paws, and it never leaves your side.